Hello and welcome back to Small Business Diaries. I'm your host, John Davis, and as always, I'm joined by Steve Ledgerwood, our co-host. Today, we've got a fantastic episode for you all lined up. For the first time in Small Business Diaries history, we have not just one, but two guests on our podcast.
Woo-hoo!
Yes! Today we've got Rob Skinner and we've got Claire Lamb, both from Skout PR, an agency based in Macclesfield, even though we've just established that Rob's not actually in Macclesfield. He's in somewhere that begins with D that I don't remember or care about. But the three of us go way back, right, guys?
We do indeed. We do indeed. I'm sure he'll remind you where that place is beginning with D very shortly.
I might just keep everyone guessing. So just to sort of, some clickbait for the
elaborate
episode.
tension.
Yeah, exactly. Is it Derby? Is it, wherever? I don't know. It
I
could
hope
be.
it's not Derby.
That's a bit mean to anybody from Derby.
I was just about to say,
from Derby.
animated.
I'm
Hope
from
your listeners
Derby.
aren't. You're from Derby, are you? Oh, that's
Near
all right.
Derby, just about, like Burton-on-Trent.
Fine. I'll let you off there.
Nice.
It's obviously not Derby, so yeah, let's keep guessing.
I've
Guess
closed the
it.
curtains just in
Just in case,
there's no
yeah.
guessing.
Well, it's not sunny, so it's not somewhere remote. That's for sure.
It's not Durban, no.
No, that would be a good one. That
Oh,
would be
nice
amazing.
reference.
Yeah.
Nice reference.
Nice.
So, guessing game besides, I just wanted to actually kick things off and get you guys to just give us a little background on who you are, what you do, and why you started Skout.
Well, I'll give this a go. I did my research before this call, obviously
Ooh.
trying to make sure that I'm prepared. And it wasn't Skout PR that I was referencing. It was more of a dating app or site. So when I originally looked at it, I was like, John's definitely briefed me the wrong version of today. And then obviously realized my mistake and then, looked at your website. So yeah, that was my intro to you guys today.
Yeah. There is an issue in that there is a very popular dating app, or I don't even know if it's an app or brand, to be honest, with the same name. Yes, we are very different and distinct from. Well, we are all about partnerships. I mean, it just depends on how you want to look at it.
I was going to say friendships, partnerships.
Absolutely.
We do occasionally get an email saying, like, I used your app, but I didn't like the person. Okay.
And then you respond and say, it wasn't me, it was Claire.
Quite likely.
Anyway, shall we do the proper thing? So yeah, I'm Rob. Hello everyone. I'm Rob. I'm the founder and MD of Skout. So yeah, I come from a sort of 30-year career in PR for my sins, and I've run Skout for 15 of those years. So it's whizzed by. What we do B2B comms, basically. So we help B2B businesses in all sorts of sectors to communicate better to their audiences in order to grow, prosper, sell more, whatever that goal might be.
Nice. It's almost like you've been practicing that vision. Mission statements. I'm Claire. I'm a director at Skout. It's interesting. Rob and I met kind of at the beginning of Skout's journey, really. We were introduced by a mutual ex-colleague, actually, who thought we'd probably get on. And we did, really, and the rest is history. We had really similar backgrounds, and PR is a really, really small world. So we were quite surprised that we'd never really bumped into each other, although we knew each other's agencies, previous backgrounds. So yeah, my background is very similar, 30 years experience for my sins, although I know I don't look old enough. Feel free to jump in, people. Jump in.
When? Yes.
What did you say? And when?
You're so young. Wow, that's amazing.
Good save,
That's
Steve.
the right
Good save,
response.
Steve. Good save.
Right response. I think, the reason we got really similar backgrounds is we both kind of started life in tech PR specifically. So both kind of, as the tech industry kind of grew up, really, it was a start back then, which made it really kind of fun times. But over the years it's kind of changed into more, Skout as an agency is much broader than that. So we're full B2B. I still retain a love of tech. But I found that's recently morphed into a love of HR because there's so much going on in the HR space at the
Wow,
moment,
that's
surprisingly.
true. I agree.
And yeah, some of our HR brands clients are just doing some really fun and really interesting stuff.
Good stuff. Rob, it's obviously you met Claire right at the start. just take us back to why you started Skout. Like,
I thought you were going to say that
behind
fateful day, John.
Yeah.
Don't tempt me.
Back to
Well,
Scout.
I met this person called Claire. I just thought I have to start an agency with this person.
Yeah.
So no, that wasn't the original outset. Basically, I was working in an agency. It was an agency that I didn't found, but I joined. I was like first employee. I'd been there 11 years. I learnt absolutely loads, but it became really quite a frustrating role. And I was just at that point where, where do you go next in PR? You tend to kind of get to that point where you've sort of risen through the ranks to something like around associate director. And it's a bit like, well, where do I go now? Do I go freelance? Do I run my own thing? Do I just sort of bob around, deputy MD kind of role? And at the time, I just felt the need for a big change. I'd moved back up north. And yeah, it was a bit of an eye-opener, really. I just kind of thought, what am I going to do? I resigned, and then one of the non-execs in my old agency sort of said, have you thought about doing your own thing, setting up? And to which I said no. And he said, well, why not? You'd be really good at it. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And that's kind of how it started, really. I had to pay the bills. So decided it was more lucrative than just being a freelancer. So, yeah.
Oh, was it a desire then, like, to break free of, like, the corporate role, or like to progress, further, or a mixture of the two that really drove you?
Yeah, I think, I hadn't worked, my background is not really in huge agencies, so I tended to work in sort of smaller startup-y type agencies that were quite fast moving. But I think, when you're working in a sort of owner managed business, but you're not, you're not the owner manager, and you're sort of the deputy, essentially, it's quite a hard place. It can be quite a hard place to be, because you feel like you're kind of doing everything for somebody else, and that person is very much kind of leading the charge in their style. And for me, it didn't really work. It's probably not the same for everybody, but for me, it didn't really work. And I think I've learned loads by setting up on my own, and doing it independently. It's kind of helped me to learn a lot about myself and about the skills that I've got within me that I wasn't using.
Yeah. And like, to talk to me about the early days when you first got started. So did you take on any sort of advice, or did you just go, you know what, right, I'm just going to start this PR consultancy agency, whatever it was at the time, and just kind of ran with it?
Pretty much, yeah. I think having a lot of kind of very, very transferable experience, I didn't take a huge amount of advice. But bear in mind, when I started, it was just me. So beyond sort of getting basic advice, like, going out, putting feelers out for things like, I need an accountant, I need this, that, and the other, as a sort of basics to get going. Beyond that, it was a case of buy a laptop, get an email account, get going. I was very fortunate in that the job I was leaving, they passed me a couple of leads, which I had to pitch for on my own, and won. So that was good. So really kind of hit the ground running from day one. It was just a case of getting on with the work. So not much time for sort of thinking about it too much. So no, not a huge amount of advice. I hope that's the right answer. But yeah, that was me. But I'm quite, as Claire will attest, I'm quite a sort of introverted person. So I tend to sort of go in on myself. If I need to come up with the answer for something, I tend to sort of knuckle down and try and work it out for myself, rather than go out and get input from other people.
And did you, when you started everything, so you got your accountant, you set up your company,
yeah,
what kind of advice did you get for that, or was that just Googling it?
For the accountant and for those sort of critical business services, that was generally sort of, having coffees with people from, past jobs, and just kind of letting them know what I'm doing, and then it'd fall into conversation, So I did, I suppose, thinking about it, I did sort of hook up with a couple of people who'd recently done a similar sort of thing, and they gave me some sort of basic advice around stuff like that. Local people who were freelancing or running small agencies, put me in touch with a few contacts and stuff like that. So yeah, harking back 15 years, it's quite actually hard to remember how and where it all started. But yeah, so yeah, I think personal networks, I suppose, ultimately massively important. Whatever you kind of MO is personal network's really important for getting that kickstart, definitely.
And this is a theme that we've kind of encountered across, like, we've done about 11 of these to this point, maybe 12 actually, and one of the key themes that we found with founders and small business owners is having that network like right at the start is so important to give you that kickstart, in growing and developing and even getting your kind of foot on the first rung of the ladder, kind of thing. So it's great that you have that. And just going
Rob,
back
I have a hard question for you. Do you remember your first project/client?
I do. Yes, I do. Absolutely. So I was, it was actually the company that I met John. So they were my first client, Wax Digital, based near Manchester. And yeah, I pitched for the business before I started. Probably the hardest pitch I've ever done, because I sort of was doing all of the thinking on my own, all of the creative. And I was away. I went skiing for a week in between finishing my old job and starting the new one. And I remember phoning Daniel every day, going, "Have you made a decision yet?" Like desperately hoping for the right answer, which I got. I think he held me off till like practically the last day of the holiday, and then said, "Yes, good news, good news. Yeah, can you come in on Monday?" "Oh yes, okay." But yeah, I remember it well. And we've sort of kept. Obviously, John's a key contact from there, but we've kept in contact with a couple of people who we got to know through there. So talking about networks, one of the people who was enrolled prior to John, Sue, she's been a client like 4 or 5 times over. So yeah, a repeat offender, as we like to call them.
And what Rob doesn't point out is the fact that they became one of our longest standing clients as well. They stayed with us well beyond the norm that you find. There's an attrition rate in PR for clients, and they stayed way beyond that. So it was he was obviously doing something right.
Why do you folks think that is? Why do you think that like Wax stayed around for so long?
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, we both worked on it kind of separately during the course of its lifetime, but I think it was our ability to never stand still with it. So we never got tired with it, and I think they never got tired with us either. There was always a new challenge, there was always a new objective, there was always a new direction, and I think we rose to that every single time. And then even in the times when stuff was running as normal or business as usual, we were still reinventing the whole time. So we never stood still at all, and I think that is a key thing with good client relationships, which is you have the ability to stay creative.
I think the other thing that could be useful is, Rob, they took a punt on you because you were starting out, and you built that very strong connection in the beginning. And they probably were looking for someone who is a little bit more custom in the way that they did things rather than the run of the mill. And because of that relationship, it's probably lasted until today. And I think a lot of the people we've spoken to, they get their first network out, and it's generally the closer ones, or it's generally the ones that are wanting something very different. So that's also probably could be a factor.
I think so. Yeah, I think there's a loyalty on both sides, because you've jumped into that. Obviously they weren't starting out, so they didn't have that. But knowing that they were the first client and they sort of got they got in early, I suppose, is a big thing. And I'd say the same for the other client that I started working with right at the beginning. I mean, that relationship didn't last as long because that business sort of hit the rocks a bit, but still kind of have occasional contact with the CEO who's moved on to other things, and it's great to catch up. It's still a sort of definitely a thing that we share. But yeah, I mean, that's the feedback Claire gave is kind of the feedback we always got from the client, but also I think they were kind of at a point where they'd moved from working with a freelancer, but they were still kind of a bit small to go big agency. And what I was trying to do when I set up Skout was bring bigger agency thinking into a smaller agency environment. So they were kind of getting better bang for buck, as it were. And I think that was important to them from a budget perspective and value for money perspective.
I think it's really interesting, that thing about kind of networks. Really, when you're building them, you don't necessarily, at the beginning, you don't really notice that you're building them. So if you go kind of back at the beginning of your careers, and the first kind of network, so the first job and the first colleagues that you meet, inevitably those colleagues move on, as do you. And your ability to kind of grow your network happens by osmosis. It's not planned at all. And it always really surprises me, even now, if I'm on LinkedIn and I notice somebody that I new from 20 years ago doing something that connects with something that I don't have an issue ever reaching out. What's the worst they're going to do? They're going to just not respond or ignore you, aren't they? But, you know, 9.5 times out of 10, they're always going to come back and say, oh, it's lovely to hear from you, you know, what you're up to. Or they've been watching and keeping an eye on what you've been doing. And I don't think people work those networks as well as they should. I mean, I remember going on I'm thinking about LinkedIn particularly, but I remember going on a LinkedIn course and the guy, I mean, this was like 10 years ago, when he was like, just accept every connection. And I went through a whole period where that's what I did. I accepted so, you know, obviously I got bombarded with sales and all the rest of it. I had to refine the approach a little bit towards people recently. I was like, do not accept that one, Claire. But actually, it's the great thing. Sometimes these people will connect you because you put a post up or whatever that was, you know, they resonated with them. And then all of a sudden you can start talking to them about other things. And so I think, yeah, you do. You kind of build this funnel of networks that people don't work as well as they probably could.
I have an interesting story. I post on LinkedIn. I post our team posts on LinkedIn, and I got a really interesting like and comment the other day from someone who I worked with 30 years ago, and I was in the marketing team. I was one of the marketing team members. And she had just started before I left, and randomly she gave me a like, and she followed up with a little bit of a message, and I was like, wow, that's just so long ago, but it's still a connection, right? We had a good point at that that point. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, can I interject, or do you may ask another question?
You may.
Very polite, aren't I?
See the difference.
No, well, people from locations that begin with D generally are quite polite.
Exactly.
You should definitely not be polite in this conversation, particularly for John.
No.
So
you should be incredibly rude.
Well,
right.
Normally I'd be a bit more on edge, but yeah, I was actually watching an old episode of Taskmaster yesterday. I feel like I'm channeling a bit of a Ramesh Ranganathan misery today. I don't know what it is. Anyway, that's a total. You probably want
By the way,
that's
I'm interjected. That's not a persona. I used to work with Ramesh. He was a stand-up comedian. Yeah, that's actually him. I used to work at a comedy club.
Wow,
a while ago.
Is that where you picked up all your jokes?
No, I work on my own. I'm trying to work on my own.
It's all the cast-offs. It's the cast-offs. Steve.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's bad, and I'm like, oh, that's gold. I'll take that. But no, that is not a persona. That's just him. Yeah, it's brilliant.
It was good. He was like, I mean, he was looking seriously angry because he wasn't winning. He was like giving like proper evils to everyone. Anyway. And aside, it's not a podcast about that. What was I can't remember what I was saying now. Oh yeah, I know what I was going to say. Was talking about networks. One of the things that just occurred to me that, you know, when setting up the business was, I think I mentioned earlier, like unlocking all of these skills that you kind of thought you couldn't really do because you'd kind of worked in a more functional role within a bigger business. And suddenly when you're going it alone, it's like, oh shit, I've got to do absolutely everything now.
Yeah.
You know, so that I just, and it wasn't like I thought, oh, I'm going to have to go do loads of training. There was some things I did, like I went on a presenting course and stuff like that. But a lot of it was just like, well, I'm going to have to do it. So let's do it. And you suddenly like, oh, I could do that. That's amazing. I really thought I would never be able to do that.
How do you prioritize in that context? You know, because like, you know, you've got your subject matter expertise. This is what we find when we're speaking to these people, to small business owners. I was about to say these people, business owners,
these weirdos.
Yeah.
These people.
Unbelievably, you know, passionate about what they do. Huge subject matter expertise, and it's like, you know, crikey, I've got all these like other things outside of my core remit that I need to tackle. You know, how do you do that? Like, how did you get into that mindset?
I would say it's sort of the just do it. You just got.
I mean, you're in it, right? So you can't do anything else. You just got to get on with it.
Yeah, it's doing the financials, and you know, probably Claire will say we've sort of both agreed we're a little over-engineered for our size at the moment, but that's because it's sort of like, oh, get ahead of yourself. Don't do your financials on the back of a fag packet. Get a spreadsheet in place. Get it all sorted. So, you know, reassurance and peace of mind. You know, I've never been somebody who wanted to run my own business and work 14-hour days and spend the whole weekend stressing. I mean, there have been times like this, but one of the things I wanted to do from the beginning was make sure it worked for me. I had a young family at the time. It was not sort of stepping into the abyss of never doing anything but work. But so yeah, I think a lot of it is just a case of, right, how am I going to do this? And my accountant was invaluable in that regard. I was like, this is how I want to do the books. Will this work? Yes, no, and sort of adapting with that. So it's important to have those professional support.
But it's freeing, I think, to a certain extent as well. I mean, Rob and I have both been doing PR for 20 years, and he's right. Whilst we got to that senior point in bigger agencies, kind of, it's what's next. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I'd like to try and do something else. So running a business, I think, is a really natural evolution from that, which is, well, okay, so let's see if I'm any good at HR, finance, account, all the other bits that come with owning a small business, basically. And I think it hits you at a certain stage of your own career, which is, okay, now's got to be the right time. But you just have to give it a go. I mean, the great thing about having two heads, I think, is that we naturally divide and conquer. So there are things that Rob's brilliant at that I'm rubbish at, and vice versa. I'll just say it. He knows that's it.
Although not as much, right?
It just means that, every day, not so much now, but at the beginning, I think every day you'd wake up and think, oh my God, how the hell am I going to do this? And it's like, whoa, I'm just going to have to give it a go and see. And that's the whole learning process. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't.
I think one of the things that I've noticed in these podcasts, but also generally, people are so fearful of starting by themselves. There's reasons, right? Obviously, there's a financial reason, there's a family reason, there's a fear of being a failure, there's all these other reasons. But generally, the people that have started out, they haven't had these fundamentally creative and unknown ideas that are going to just change the world. It's generally you have a skill or some expertise that you have, and you have a few leads, right? And then someone's encouraged you to just try it, right? So, and then you've said, okay, I might as well. So it's a lot of those things where people fear the unknown because they're wanting this crazy solution that's going to change the world. But actually, it's just what are you good at right now, and do we have a little bit of a network where we can go out and find some business, right? So I'm always encouraged by that.
Yeah, particularly I think the ones that come up with the creative idea that's going to change the world are actually quite rare and far and few between, if you like. I mean, I've worked for some of them doing their PR over the years, but I think most people that set up their businesses because they're looking to try and do something else, utilize different skill sets, trying to see whether they can do it or not, or as Rob said, just a bit frustrated doing what you were doing already. You love some parts of it, but you don't, so why not? I mean, I think for me, one of the great things about Skout was it was always going to be an agency that I wanted to work for. And that for me was really important. I have to know that I want to get up and go to work every day. Whether you own a business or not, you need to fundamentally enjoy what you do. And, I got to an agency where I was just, it was still a great, amazing agency. And I had a few more kind of circumstances at play, but, the frustrations of getting to a certain level and thinking, I just want to have an agency that I want to work for. And that's kind of, was one of the goals and aims of Skout, really.
That's great insight. I just want to move on now to just kind of the challenges that you've faced, since you were founded. What were the biggest problems that you encountered? And how did you both deal with them?
Yeah, I mean, aside from actually getting the business in, and I think the biggest challenge is people. Certainly, my perspective is probably more in the early days. Claire, you could probably pick up more on if you agree, pick up more on the recent. And I suppose I have to say, this is by no means saying we've got some terrible people in the business, because we haven't today. That we've worked really hard to get a really good team who are excelling, in the business, and they really are, which is fantastic. But when we started, I think it's that sort of, it's getting the snowball, gaining the traction, because you literally, obviously, like, how do you convince the first person to come and join you? Claire wasn't the first employee. She came in as a freelancer initially, because she played hardball. She wouldn't accept my job offers. So, which I totally,
This sounds salacious.
kept me going. Exactly. It's not. It's really not.
More about that later.
Yes. But then, getting people, A, that you could afford, and B, that would sort of take that leap of faith was quite difficult. So the first person we hired was totally new to PR. He was a young guy. He actually did really, really well. But he decided it was kind of like a leapfrog to something else, so he didn't stop. So he bought into me and he bought into the business, which was great. And that was probably the only way I was ever going to hire somebody at that level. But he wasn't so committed to what we did. And then we sort of gradually, found other people, but we had a lot of near misses. We tried to recruit somebody more senior. About 2 or 3 times, it got to the 11th hour, and then they backed off because they were like, "I've got another job offer. It's more secure." That was the message. It was more secure.
No risk.
You were a bit risky. And then, we had a couple of people who started and then chose to leave, I think for the same reason, that it was just a bit of a cottage industry, hard environment to work in if you'd worked in a bigger business. So kind of, I think with Claire joining, a lot of it was kind of going from just doing things, getting things done, to starting to try and do things well, because having Claire and I working in partnership gave a greater skill set. Claire filled the gaps that I wasn't so good at, and vice versa. So we could start to specialize a bit and say, right, you look after HR, I'll look after finance, we'll do the client work between us, share new business, etc. So you can start to kind of develop a bit more competency. But yeah, people, I think getting the first few good people in the business is tough.
And tell me, you got your first couple of leads, you got your first couple of clients, and then, like any network, it kind of runs dry, and then you got to try and push. How did you both go about doing that?
I think new business is a perpetual challenge for any small business. I mean, it's basically your bread and butter, isn't it? And over the, we have a new business strategy. We've always treated it as a functional part of the business. So it's not, oh God, we haven't got, we're going to lose a client, we need to replace a client. We've never really viewed it that way at all. Over the years, we've had very different iterations of a strategy. When times are good, your strategy is going to be your new business strategy is going to be very different than it is, when COVID hit, for example, and we saw this pullback from the market from particularly a lot of tech firms, through to, last year was a challenge in terms of new business. So it's just making sure that your new business strategy fits whatever market that you're dealing with, and it's that classic thing, isn't it, about you just don't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, because it's just not going to happen. So Rob and I share that as a responsibility. We've never really split that one side or the other, because we both bring different things to it. And I would say we probably have a 5-armed approach at the moment. So we just know that we need to cover off lots of different kind of areas. Rob's got a really great strategic head. So he's managed to kind of build the strategy in such a way that's really easy for everybody in the business to understand.
Brilliant.
We introduced a concept last year, which was new business is everybody's business. It's what pays the salaries. It's what makes Skout great. It can't just sit as a responsibility on mine and Rob's head. We've got a deputy MD, CJ, who's really senior as well. So we give targets, not just upsell targets, but new business targets across the agency, and we reward them for it. We were talking about networks earlier. When somebody comes on board to us from another agency, they'll have ex clients that they've worked for and with. So it's just making sure that you stay focused on what is going to work for that period of time, then change it when, the economy picks up, or, you see a big growth market, for example. But just making sure that it kind of filters all the way down. It's been a challenge. If you're a junior account exec in PR, you're looking at me as if to say, why on earth would I want to sell anything? That's not my job. But explain to them that actually they sell every single day to a journalist. They're on the phone selling a story. It's no different. We're just asking them to think about it a bit more from a new business perspective. But I think you need to try and it's not been easy embedding it in the agency at all, but you have to.
This mentality about, bringing in everyone in business to be responsible for new business is a mentality that Steve's definitely imbued in me. as a content person, at Capsule, the first thing he said to me is like, I look at you, John. Obviously, he said something awful bantery about me, but after we got past the banter, he was like, I see a salesperson behind the keyboard. Sell, 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 sell. And that's the message that he's given to me, for the last 2 years, that, there's a kind of proclivity within the content, industry to like back away from like the commercial side of things, because like it's difficult to attribute, it's difficult to like point value. But my thinking's definitely changed. Working for a volume SaaS company, working under Steve, that like it's not just the responsibility of like our brilliant sales development reps. It's on all of us, because that's what keeps us going. As a business.
I mean, it's not just for marketing, right? So I really take on board your thoughts here, Claire. Just the whole organization, we're trying to make sure that they have a mindset to look for opportunities. And every function has a different role in that, but it doesn't mean that they can't focus on what that looks like. And if the goal is growth, what are you going to do today to try and make that change and make that happen? So we haven't got it right for every function, because every function is still like, not sure about that, but at least we're trying to message that to a point where everyone understands that that's what we're trying to look for. So how do we do that?
And I think you're right to do it by department, because everybody thinks and works in a very, very different way. I had a group of account handlers and creatives who do PR every day, but we also had an ops team who were very fearful of getting involved in sales as well. And we haven't structured it differently, but we've made sure that the support has been very different. So it's like, what looks great for, we said to them, okay, go and find the client that you really want to work for, and then we'll build a plan. We'll build a plan about how to reach them, because the way to keep them engaged was for them to think, oh my God, these guys could be a client of mine. How much fun would that be? Or how interesting would that be? Or whatever their motivator is. And it was just getting them to see that actually any client is a possibility if you just work it in the right way. But yeah, I think it's interesting. You do have to change it depending on who you're talking to.
Change the message, change the story, depending on your audience.
I think, we're not a big, we're still a small business, there's 10 of us in the team today, but even within that, there's a huge diversity in the way people's brains work and what their natural focus is, even though a lot of them are sort of doing the same job. One thing that we really try and sort of maintain and improve is people's individuality, and trying to help them to do these things their way rather than the being a Skout way. And I think there is always that kind of tendency as a business evolves. You get these kind of natural processes that the way you do stuff, and we're sort of trying to break the mold a bit and say, yes, there's a framework, there's a backbone that we operate within, but we want you to be an individual, and we want you to find the way of doing this that works best for you, as long as it sort of fits the framework very roughly. So that's a big focus for us moving forwards, because I think it's a bit of a learning experience. We're still growing up, and changing all the time.
It's funny, isn't it? You just reminded me of it, which was there was a period, wasn't there, where we were saying to people, just because something's been done, and I don't know if you've heard this before as well from other small businesses, just because something's been done a certain way, it's just because that's how Rob and I did it. It doesn't make it right. It just means it's just how Rob and I did it. And then it just became easier for other people to replicate what Rob and I was doing. And we did work quite hard to remove that. And it's like, it's just how I do it. It's not how you do it. You go and do it your way. And that absolutely is likely to be better than the way that Rob and I did it. So yeah, it's just about making sure that the people feel like they can be themselves, and encourage that kind of diversity throughout your staff.
I think that's the strength for small businesses, right? So there is the fear of insecurity and what's going to happen to us. I have some very close friends that are in the emotional intelligence space in South Africa. And the founder, was my best man at my wedding, and the co-founder, who was also the best man at my wedding, they both, every year, they're just like, I don't know where we're going to get the money from. But they are super transparent to their staff, and they have around 15 staff. And if the month is tough, they say, look, this is what it is, but obviously we'll recoup the money later. but it's amazing the loyalty that they've got from their staff. But the strength about that is that they are able to work in a way that allows them to be more free in their opinions, try to do different things. And so the negative is, well, where's the money coming from? But the positive is actually you can build out, the way that you feel like you want to build out with some freedom and some opportunity. So yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, I think so. You've got to, we recently, about 18 months ago, we became employee owned. So we were actually at the Employee Ownership Association conference this year. It was really interesting to kind of hear other businesses talking about that sort of need to give people flexibility and the ability to feel they're delivering value, and that actually being the kind of the nub of why people come to work every day. Yeah, you've got this sort of basic hierarchy of needs in terms of salary, benefits, all of the things, the boxes that you need to tick as an employer. But then beyond that, it's really about allowing them to do great things, allowing them to be their self and be successful in that regard. And I think, by no means have we got it taped, but we're trying to constantly improve in that area, and sort of give people more freedom to realize the value that, getting a piece of press coverage for a client, does to them, does to their own, their own belief in themselves and things like that. So, yeah.
I want to talk about the employee-owned piece in a bit, because what I wanted to actually ask you, a couple of things actually. So first, think about your mistakes that you may have made in your journey, to where you are now. Any you'd like to share with us in a very non-judgment-free environment, I might add, building Skout.
I don't believe that for a second, John.
And then secondly,
what
after
mistakes?
If there's an opportunity to talk about numbers as well, like today, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Mistakes.
There's been a few I can think of that popped to mind immediately. Comes back to people again, which is it's going to sound really off, but employing the wrong people. That's not what I mean necessarily. It's more about employing the people that fit. It's probably not a very good explanation. Rob was saying right at the beginning, there was a couple of people that we hired that really on reflection. But I guess that's the great thing about reflection, isn't it? That, you see that, from the beginning, they probably they didn't like the freedom that we would give them. It wasn't an environment that they could thrive in, because they were much more used to being in a process run organization, which we weren't at that time. So I think there was a couple of errors there, perhaps.
Having had your time now, how would you safeguard against that in the future? Just thinking of our prospective listeners who may fall into that trap.
I don't know if you can. I really don't know. You're not gonna meet the real person in. Our interview process is quite complex for such a small company, and it was done to try and work that out. Which was, are you gonna thrive in our environment or are you not? And you can't do that off the back of 3 1-hour interviews. You just can't. I think absolutely never allow one person to hire. That's a big mistake, because you hire the same person over and over again. So, even if I look at how we did it informally, Rob did some interviews and it was availability more than anything else. I might do some others. Now we've got a process where HR talks to everybody first and make sure that logistically it's right. And then we go into people that they work with to make sure. And you need a number of people to go through that, because everyone, if you have a diverse team, everyone thinks diversely. Is that right? Diversely.
Diversely, yeah.
You wouldn't think I'm in words for a living.
I was going to say, your PR.
Monday morning still.
Wow. Have you had your coffee?
You need the most diverse approach you can possibly take if you're going to have the most diverse workforce. I'll stop.
Actually, I mean, that's a very important point. Many of the podcasts guests we've had talk about making a hiring mistake. And I strongly recommend to everyone that is owning a small business that you're not making a hiring mistake, you're making a hire. And at that point, things work out, things don't. Like you said, do they fit in terms of your day-to-day operations? Do they fit in terms of their strategic thinking? You can't get that all in a few interviews, right? And it's also not a mistake to have an open conversation and say, this is not working out. It's not a mistake. It's just, we tried it. It didn't really work out. If for some reason it's not gelling, we wish you all the best. We obviously think that you're still amazing. You have skills that other companies can find very useful. But in this environment, it's just not gelling, right? I don't think that that's a bad conversation to have. It's just life, right?
And it's learning, isn't it? I think you're right. Reframe it as away from a mistake and reframe it as learning, which is you get a better understanding about what makes people work or what makes people tick, within a workplace. And I think you can use that learning and apply it forward. But yeah, not everybody is going to fit, and that's okay. You're absolutely right. That's okay. They might not fit with you, but they're going to fit somewhere else.
Nothing's ever perfect either, is it? That's the thing, especially in a small business. You have to, it sounds quite mercenary, but there are stepping stones that need to be taken, and sometimes hires are, hires, people are not going to, most people are not going to stick around forever or even for the long term. So you need to go into it with your eyes as open as they are. And I think that's definitely a mistake I made was, being passionate about the business. You expect everybody else to be as passionate and you can't really understand why they're not. And then when they leave, you feel a bit annoyed.
Personal.
Yeah.
Personal.
Existential. Move to Devon.
Cut the ties. Yeah.
You're
dead to me
I also think as an employee size of 10, the next hire you do requires a certain amount of investment that is really difficult, right? So if you are employee size of 100, you can kind of swallow the cost and not have to deal with it in a much more tangible way. But for small business owners, the narrative is really, hey, this is a significant step for us, and so we have to get it right. If we don't, then it means that we are losing lots of opportunity with limited budget. So yeah, I always recommend just being transparent.
Yeah, definitely. And we're having to, Claire and I have had to look at how we remunerate ourselves, because we've always, as a business, we've always been of the mindset that you get paid for the job you do. We're not sort of directors in the business, or we'll live off peanuts until the dividends come in, kind of thing. So we've always paid ourselves properly. There's always, with the employee ownership, creates an ownership change, so that changes the dynamics of that a bit. But we've also had to look at other ways of remuneration to unlock money in the business to help reapportion that into hiring, basically, to try and sort of share the to share that reward a bit more, so that we are in a position to hire more strategic people, or find those people within the business and give them what they should be getting.
And it keeps your focus on it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I've got another mistake as well. So this was one that I think Rob raised a while ago, which was we probably made the mistake of staying in the business rather than working on the business. And it was a bit of a light bulb moment where we both suddenly, we were doing the day to day. And you've got to remember as well, because we come from a PR background, I love being in PR. I love being an account director. But it got to the point where we were doing it so much, we were forgetting that actually what we were trying to do was grow a business at the same time. So a couple of years ago, probably just before the EOT happened, actually, was us taking, having an informed conversation about we're not going to get to where we want to go if we continue to do the same thing. So actually taking the decision to step out of the day-to-day client management. And that's slightly terrifying, because you want everybody to be brilliant at what they do, but they're not going to do it in the way that you want or the way that you did, and you've just got to give them a space to do that. But yeah, actually that was we probably did it for a bit, not too long, but long enough when we got to that point of realization that we needed to stop doing the business and work on growing the business.
Yeah. I want to move on now to talking a little bit more about small businesses and PR for the wrap up segment of the podcast. So wanted to ask you, for our listeners, many are like small business owners in similar size to you, maybe a little bit smaller. Some are a little bit bigger. What should small businesses do PR? And is there like an ideal stage for small businesses to do PR?
Yeah. Yes, there is. Yes, they should in many ways. I think for me, the biggest thing is going into it with your eyes open as to why you're doing it, what you're doing it for, what you're expecting to get out of it. And if you've got your eyes open, and you've got your objectives right, then absolutely, it can be highly valuable. It's a really good way of quickly building brand awareness. What it isn't is a great way of building a sales pipeline when you're not doing any other form of marketing. And that's the common problem that you find with small business owners is PR seems to be this thing that they think, oh, PR, we'll do some PR, we'll get in the media, and then the floodgates will open. But they're not actually investing in marketing strategy, or they're not investing in proper marketing comms. My thing would be, well, first question, and I think Claire would agree, is like, well, what else are you doing from a marketing perspective, and what do you want to achieve out of it? And if they can't answer those questions right, then that's the difference between yes or no from a PR perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. We often we call it PR ready. Is this brand PR ready? And it's often the failure to think about really what their marketing strategy is first and foremost. I completely agree. It's not a red flag, but Rob, the Skout's first client was this conversation with the CEO. But often when you have a CEO that approaches you, it's because they haven't got their marketing function up and running. And there's been a couple of startups that have come to us and have said, we've got this great idea, we're disrupting the market, we're going to change the world. And it's like, well, that's great. And I can see the value of the product. Absolutely. But to do that, you need to sit and think about how you're going to change the world, not why you can change the world. A lot of products are often created because they can be, not because they should be, or that there is a market for it. So we would often, it's a bit of a litmus test, really, just to see if people are PR ready. Not recently, a while ago, stood back from a prospect, the lead that came in, where they said, that they had this product, and I do think it will change the world, but they didn't even have a marketing manager at that point. And I said, I think actually don't spend the budget with us, go and hire a marketing person, get them to do the strategy, get them to work out how you're going to go to market, and then come back and have a chat. And I'm here, I'm still here if you want to talk it through. If there's anything that you're not sure of, just give me a call, and I'm really happy to do that. But then you're not in a position to go to press really until you've got that nailed. I think
it's also about what who you employ to do that. If you want to do PR and you've got the right goals in mind for a small business, it's also about what's going to get you the best returns, and you need to look at the different opportunities. You could hire somebody with those PR skills internally. You may have they may have other skills that you need, crucial skills you need, like copywriting or content creation that you need for SEO, for example. So there might be a full-time role there, and that's the way to go. Or you might want to look at a freelance resource for PR rather than an agency, without sort of putting us out of work. I think, there's a big difference in hourly rates between an agency and a freelancer, and quite often there's the reason for that. But, for a small business, a really good freelancer can do a really good job. And you'll get better bang for buck. You'll get more out of it. So as your first stepping stone, it's definitely, a good piece of advice. You've just got to make sure you find a good one.
I have a left field question here. Sorry, John. One of the things that, I've been in leadership roles for marketing sales for a very long time. One of the things that always comes up when we are doing any PR is, how do we measure success on PR? And so I don't know, maybe you can give us a little bit of your insights, and just to give us some of that framework, particularly for people who are on this journey themselves. They want to spend as much productive or constructive money as possible in the early days. Yeah, give us some insights.
I think it's changed enormously over the last kind of 5-10 years. When I first started in PR, we didn't measure it, and I think the whole industry hid behind the smokes and mirrors angle, which was, how do you measure brand awareness? It's an intangible. It's not like an email campaign where you can see hit open rates, you can see who converts. You don't have the same kind of metrics. But that doesn't mean it's not measurable. So at Skout, we talk about like every form of marketing you ever have, you set your KPIs and that's what you work towards. But what you end up with, if you work that way, is you have a set of inputs and then you have a set of outcomes. And your outcomes might be that you've got 30 pieces of coverage in tier 1 publications, all with a positive voice, and this many people saw it. That's outcome based. What the PR is trying to do, or definitely what we're doing at Skout, is we're moving that conversation away from outcomes to what we call impact. And what that means is a much more joined up story. So impact requires us to be integrated into the broader marketing mix, if you like. So brand awareness is just one part of that story. It's a very top of funnel job, brand awareness, and it's hard to track a single person that saw you in a newspaper through to then you may have followed up with an email outreach to them. They may have visited the website. So what we're trying to do with the impact is create that journey that then will tell you what the impact has been. And we've done it with a few clients recently, and it's still being refined. And I've seen, there is industry guidelines out there. So there's something called the AMEC principles, which was created by a lot of great brains, bigger than mine in the PR industry, who worked out that there were kind of 7 areas that should be measured. But for me, they're still very outcome based, and it needs to evolve to the next stage, which is looking at impact. And that's what we've done. So we're putting data down from client systems, whether that's HubSpot, whether that's your Salesforce, whether it's just
Capsule, Transpond.
Sorry. Capsule, absolutely. Oh my God, put your foot in it. 101, that is.
Yeah. Cheers, Claire.
So we're putting data out of, your CRM, your
other CRMs are available.
Anyway, but it's building that together basically into a framework that tells what the impact of the investment is. If PR is costing you X, PR along with the whole of the marketing mix is delivering Y. It's not a standalone metric function.
That's great. Thank you. That's useful.
That's all right. Sorry, I'm just going to chip in, but I mean, just to provide a bit of a counter view, especially for small businesses, is to some degree get a grip and stop trying to measure everything, because
spicy.
Small businesses, serendipity, alchemy, gut feel. That's what we spend a lot of our time measuring stuff with. And I mean, I would say this goes for businesses. This is what I'd like to say to a lot of businesses, full stop, really, is, for goodness sake, have you actually got time to measure all of these things? Probably not. Stop basing all of your financial decisions on what you can measure versus what you can't. And you realise that, you need to dip your hand in your pocket for stuff that is just stuff that you think you need to do. And you know what good looks like. Everyone knows what good looks like from a PR perspective, really. But we are doing all this measurement, and that is a good thing, especially for larger businesses where you're looking at competitive differences and stuff like that. But to some degree, it's like, well, look at your investment scale before you start asking your agency about having 50 million KPIs in place. Because,
well, it's all about investment and risk, isn't it? PR's an investment. And I guess like with any investment that you make, including ones in your private life, there's a degree of risk involved with it.
I don't need to hear about any of those decisions, John.
Neither do we. Yeah, let's just.
Where's that conversation going?
You've obviously had a bad weekend, by the sound of it.
No, I've had a great weekend, actually.
Well, actually, for us at Capsule CRM, that's Capsule CRM. Not HubSpot or Salesforce, just Capsule CRM. We take the same approach, right? So we're a very data-driven company, so we do take every opportunity to be able to measure anything that we can. But particularly for things like this, where we believe that it will help us in brand awareness and, things that are important to us, which we can't measure, we do take a calculated decision based on the fact that it sounds like it's the right thing to do, right? So, but very interesting. Thank you for that input. That's useful.
It's great, isn't it? You literally see mine and Rob's brains completely there.
I imagine, like off camera, there'll be a very bitter battle to the death.
Which is interesting because Rob's the finance guy, so and he's telling us not
Yes,
to
I know.
measure anything.
Yeah.
So it's
I
really
know, I know.
But I think this is what makes our relationship so hilarious sometimes, which is often we come at it from each other's perspective and we look at each other and we're like, what?
What
Why is
happened
that
here?
even
How did this
happening?
happen?
We're both
Very
just
true.
very confused people.
The only people that never get confused about it is you and I. It's just everybody else.
Yeah.
It's Rob's and Claire's world, and we're all guests in it.
Now, John, I would like that to be true. It's not, but I'd like it to be true.
All right, I want to start wrapping up. So, long-term plan for Scout. You mentioned that you're now an employee-owned business. So, just briefly talk about that, how that came about, and what the plan is going forwards for the future of Scout.
Yeah, sure. So it came about really, obviously Claire and I, if this was a video podcast, you'd be able to see we're incredibly youthful for our years, but obviously, everyone's got a lifespan. And, for us, we wanted to start getting ahead of ourselves in thinking about what that might look like, and what retirement might look like. And while it's not upon us yet, we didn't want to leave it to chance and leave it to the last minute. So that's kind of where it started a few years back, thinking about that, but thinking about what was best for the type of business that we are, because we've always been, very employee-centric, very honest and open with the team. And we actually got into conversations with a bigger agency about acquisition. So we did actually get quite far down the route of a sort of trade sale situation. And I think, that didn't happen. It wasn't going anywhere in the end, but it made us both realize that a different way, a sort of alternative way of doing it that was kinder to us and kinder to the team was a better way to go and more in, fitting with our ethos. So that's why we did it. So it's like a twofold thing, really, giving us a future and a kind of way of moving towards that quite gradually, whilst giving more opportunity to the team and keeping Scout independent, really, as a brand. We didn't really want to see it finish when we finish, so to speak. So, yeah.
That's grim. That's a grim way of putting it.
When we finish work, not when we're like,
Yeah.
As opposed to finish.
pressing the off switch.
We're good. Goodness me. Oh, that's really great.
Do you know what? Being in the talks with the other agency about it, it was really, I think, quite apparently clear quickly to both of us that actually you spend all this time building a company and then to sell it just means that you basically give away what makes it great and special. And there's no guarantees moving forward. And the EOT really gave us the opportunity just to build it in the way that we wanted to continue to build it, but give it back to them, really, because at the end of the day, they're going to be running it.
How does this? Could you be a little bit more transparent about how the split works? Is it possible? Do you obviously own more of a share, and then your employees own less? Is there a pot for future employees? Like, how does it work? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, when you go employee owned, you can the minimum you can sell is the minimum you can keep is 49%, basically. So the business has to be majority owned by the employee trust, which essentially is the owner on behalf of the employees. So it's not, if you go down the EOT, it's got certain tax efficient benefits, both for us and for the staff, but it means that it's got to be employee controlled ultimately. But it's not a direct ownership for the employees. It's basically via a trust. But you can sell up to 100%, and we chose to sell up to 100%. Just that we just wanted a clean, to do it in a clean cut way, really, and also free up shareholding flexibly for things like you can put share incentive schemes in place for staff. You can put EMI schemes in place. So selling 100% gave that more flexibility to do that while keeping 51% plus in trust as this sort of the umbrella ownership for the employees. So yeah, it's a difficult one actually, because I think I've spoken to quite a lot of companies about employee ownership, and they're immediately like, well, who owns what shares how many shares has everyone got? And it's like, well, actually, nobody other than the trust in our situation, nobody owns direct shares in the business, but the trust is there to basically own the shares on behalf of whoever is employed by the business at the time, and then they benefit from things like tax efficient bonuses and stuff like that.
And the trust is responsible for making sure that happens. So the people on the trust are employees, so they get to see, decisions that Rob and I will make or the management team will make, and they have ownership in that. But the best way to describe it, I think someone described it to me once, as naked in, naked out. So you come into Skout without shares and you go out without the shares. What you have is the benefit of working for an employee-owned business, which is run in your best interest, and there is obviously tax efficiencies for you to be had while you're here.
So there's various ways you can do it. We've done it in probably the simplest way possible, which is sell all our shares, and we've got at the moment we've got no schemes in place, but we are kind of looking at how that could work, as ways of sort of giving the team more if they want to buy into it in the future. So, but it's a great thing to do. There's a massive growing community of businesses in the UK who are doing it. So it's definitely becoming more popular. I think, the days of lots and lots of private trade sales is, maybe not now, may sort of come back in the future. Obviously, it's what some people want to do, but I think, also there is a big call for this kind of stuff as well.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Final question for you guys to wrap things up. Well, final two, actually. First of all, both of you, what's the one piece of advice you could give to your younger selves when you first started Skout?
Oh my God. I know what it is. It's a recently acquired skill for me. Talk less, listen more. My husband has this mantra, which every time I go off into one, he says to me, 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason, Claire. And it's like, I just ignore him because I'm married to him. But listening is such an essential skill. And I think I've learned how to do it. It's not a natural skill for me at all. It doesn't sit easily with me. But over the years of doing the job that I've done, you can just learn so much from people. I think I've always been curious. I'm very, very curious. I'm very nosy. So I dig into people's backgrounds, and often there's great stories in there. But I think, just listen to what's out there. There's so much advice. There's so much help. There's so much support. And the more you take on board and the more you absorb, I think the better you can be at it.
Rob?
I think for me, it's probably just do it. I mean, that relates back to starting Skout. Goes back to that thing about, I think personally, thinking that you have, things you can do and things you can't do. And I think probably for most people, not just entrepreneurs and people who set up businesses, they can actually, when it comes to it, push comes to shove, you can do most things that you need to do. Okay, you might not be able to paint a masterpiece if you're not very good at art, but, you could have a go or find a way. But, you can make things happen. You can find a way to make things happen and do whatever needs doing. And that's definitely a belief I didn't have before I started the business.
It's very easy to get stuck in your own head. I suffer from that sometimes when I overthink something. So great advice. Just do it. Final thing, where can our listeners learn more about your business?
Well, they could go to our website.
But why are we both quiet? Where do you want to put it?
I don't like prioritising. I don't like... Yeah.
You can find us. I mean, I literally want to do some American chat show. Oh no, I want to read the BBC terms and conditions. Well, you can find us on. If you want to find out more information, find us on LinkedIn. Find Rob and I separately. Find the Skout pages, website.
Not the dating one. Just
not
FYI.
the dating one.
No.
So should we be clear about the URL on this one? It's Skout, SKOUT PR.com.
And we'll make sure all that information's in the description of the episode, folks, so you can go find them and connect with Rob and Claire. With that being said, I just want to say thank you to both of you for your time. Thank you for joining us on Small Business Diaries. Don't forget, guys, to hit like, favourite, comment, and subscribe so you never, ever miss an episode, and you can let us know what you think. We'll see you guys on the next one.